Hello, all. I am a few seconds late, and that's because I was just messaging everywhere that we're going live now. So today's live, I was not there last week. I was traveling, but today I have a very special guest. As I promised last week, I have my friend, my colleague, a fellow Barks graduate, Anushree, here to talk about something very special. I felt like the first time that I could see the power of what Anushree does was through Snow story. And Snow is her rescue dog. We will get into all of it today about his journey and what I have learned, what she has learned, what we all can learn through his transformation, his journey. And so I thought I'll have her here. I'm gonna bring her onto the stage. Hi
Hi
again,
again.
as if we are seeing for the first time.
I know, hey, we are.
Yeah. So, would you want to introduce yourself, Anushree?
Oh, Saujanya. Hey everyone. I'm Anushree, obviously. Um, I have been working with rescue dogs for a long time. I joined an NGO when I was about 20, and I worked there for about 5 years. And after that, I continued to rescue a lot of dogs. I continued to foster. Um, and a couple of years after that, I think in 2020 is when I adopted Snow. And we have 5 rescue dogs. And I think today we're discussing Snow. So Snow is a dog who I adopted from a pretty bad situation. I mean, he was labeled aggressive, and he had quite badly hurt a couple of attenders at the boarding that he was abandoned at. And yeah, I'm excited to actually. I think it's the first time I'm discussing Snow, so a bit nervous, but I'm also excited.
I'm super excited. Okay, I want to bring up Snow's picture because what a beautiful boy he is. No?
Yeah, yeah. Look at him, stunning.
Yeah. Yeah. So, do you want to give, before anything, people, if you're watching us, if you're here, comment, tell us hi, let us know where you're joining us from. And through the live, as you know, you can ask questions, you can ask Anushree whatever you might have thoughts about. Both of us will chime in terms of the approach, obviously, but Anushree can talk about Snow in specific in terms of how she, worked with Snow and what her journey has been as his caregiver. But I wanted to start off by asking you, how did you find Snow?
That's an interesting question. Long story short, we actually saw him being abandoned, and convinced the owner to give him up to us, and we moved him to a clinic cum boarding, right? Um, and when I went to visit about 3 days after we had admitted him there, I went and checked with the vet. Hey, were you able to run some tests? Do we know if he's healthy? Like, can he be moved to a foster, etc.? And they said, oh, we haven't even been able to enter the kennel because he's attacked 3 attenders and it was pretty bad. And like, so they'd actually locked it and they didn't even allow us to go. So when I said, okay, but can I go meet him? And they said, no, we've locked it and you can't go. Um, so yeah, long story short, that was the situation I saw him in. When I saw him from the outside of the cage, he was stuck to the wall. He was shivering. He had peed on himself. He had pooped right where he was sitting. He hadn't eaten in 3 days. Just stuck to the wall and shivering. So it was a heavy sort of a first experience, so to speak. And I actually don't think I had a plan for him at all when I saw that, but at the moment it just felt that he needed to get out of there. Like obviously that wasn't really conducive. So it started with me seeing him in that way and saying, okay, I got to bring this dog home. Um, yeah, that was my first. That's how we met.
I think there's a video of him sticking to the wall on your Instagram, right? I think there is one video of him just
Yes.
sticking in one corner and not moving from there. I
Yeah.
remember. Yeah, that was a very heartbreaking video. Yeah. So when you say that he had bitten a few people, was were there labels that had begun to be attached to him?
Yeah, it was very casually passed off as he's an aggressive dog. You can't take him.
Right.
You can't meet him. Like there was no. I mean, it was very black and white. He bites and that's it. There's no going near him. So we've locked the cage because it's a safety issue for everyone else. Um,
Right.
and yeah, I don't think there's too much thought that's given into this. I mean, it's just for most people, just labeling the dog is the best way for them to describe this dog in the moment, right? Uh,
Right.
and 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 I knew what I was getting. Like there was no uncertainty of oh he's just biting in the moment or he bites in these moments or nothing like that. He's just an aggressive dog. That's it,
Right.
right?
Right.
So
Yeah, I mean, I think if they weren't able to meet him, get inside, not allowing you to get inside, I wonder also what would have been the long-term care for a dog like that, considering feeding, caring, or even just being there, right? Like the social needs or, safety needs. I wonder if those kind of needs would have been met in such a situation, and was that probably one of the reasons why you decided the next course of action?
actually, he hadn't even eaten in 3 days, right? So for me, this dog really looked like he didn't have the will to live, if I can say that. There was nothing in his mannerisms or his behavior that I was seeing in those few hours that I was there that would tell me that this dog wants to live, wants to do things that dogs do, and starts with just eating to stay alive, right? When you look at him physically, at the time, he looked okay. Like there was nothing. He wasn't injured. It wasn't one of those visual things
Right.
that's easy to understand that oh this dog needs help. It was the really the loss of anything good in life, right? Like I just don't want to have anything to do with this world. That was the first impression that I had. And that's the reason like I didn't even think twice about taking him out of there. I was like I just need to get him out because he's not able to eat. And see, at the end of the day, when you there are still people who use certain types of equipment and they don't realize that the impact of using this equipment has on dogs, right? uh, and these are painful, these are scary, um, and they can actually be downright dangerous. I mean, you still have people using nooses. I mean, what else is a choke collar or any of those equipments, right? It was a noose, and they have a long stick attached to it. And if you're telling me that that's that's the level of treatment this dog is going to get in this space, in my head it was very clear that this wasn't the space for this dog. This dog wasn't going to survive in an environment like this. It's as simple as that, right? forget even your Forget even your more evolved needs, but even your basic needs aren't being met. You don't even feel safe enough to eat food, right?
Yeah.
So like where do you start? So I think it was clear in my head that I need to get this dog out. And the only place I the only person stupid enough who will take in a biting dog would be me. So I took that dog home that day, and it has been a. I mean, that dog has taken me down a journey that I think I'll be telling for like a few lifetimes to come. But it's been so fulfilling because at the start of when I got him and well into a year of having him, I actually thought that I'm just going to have to live with a dog that bites. I just have to make peace with this dog who can't stay away from me for more than 5 minutes, right? For the first 2 years, I couldn't leave him alone. And I think that sent me down a spiral of what it means to be a pet parent. And is this what I signed up for? I don't think I think in my head because I had worked with dogs similar to him, also I thought that it was hey, all he needs is a safe space. All he needs is, like, making it, like, simplifying it so much. And I didn't realize how complicated each individual is, and what it might take for a dog to come out of that space and actually feel safe in an environment. And I also didn't realize how long that would take. And I think where I was, I actually didn't think it would be possible.
Yeah, I remember. I think just before this started, we were talking, right? Like, I think well into a year, and I visited once. I visited your house, and I remember even then there were conversations about how Snow would charge at your partner's, ankles, and then there was like a lot of that happening. But I think you brought up a good point, which I wanted to talk about as well, which is, I think, with uh, dogs with certain needs or certain, I think, background, right? Like, clearly Snow was probably, when you met him, was completely shut down, was had no will to live, and probably also in deep trauma at that point, I guess. um, there is a lot of caregiver, fatigue you can reach at some point, right? Because there is a lot of needs, and you want to do right by your dog, right? I don't think any of us take a dog home and say, I don't want to do right by this dog. um and that puts even more emotional baggage on us, I feel. So I think you brought that up, which is, I think, important, because I feel like it's important to acknowledge that. I'll come to that because there's a separation anxiety part also that we wanted to talk about as well. But you had been an experienced rescuer. You had worked with a lot of dogs by that point when Snow came into your life. Did you feel equipped enough to deal with the situation? And also, what was the kind of advice you had been given by then, or what did you know at that point that you felt like, okay, fine, this is what I need to do for Snow, and then it'll work.
Yeah, that's a good question. See, when I had worked with all of these dogs, I was never challenged or pushed to my limits in any way. It always seemed like, in my head, I had simplified it to, if a dog has these things, they're going to be okay. And for the most part, they were. Uh, but that's only, I mean, I hadn't worked with every dog in the world, so that's only with the limited dogs that I worked with, and it was fine, right? So even when I got into this relationship with Snow, it was, hey, I know I understand you need some time, but I'm willing to give you that space. I'm willing to be there for you. Um, but when things weren't improving in the way that I wanted in my head, uh, when things were taking much longer, um, I did reach out to a few people um, who claim to have um, studied with Turid, and that was a see. I knew for sure that I wasn't going to go down the training route. I always knew that. I think heart of heart, since I was a kid, it never appealed to me. It never made sense to me. I mean, even when we look at some of the videos that trainers put out, and the only learning I get is what not to do, what situations to not put my dog in. And so I think that was very clear. I did not want to go down. I did not want to meet a trainer. I did not want to. I mean, what am I going to train trauma out of this dog? Like, who? How? Like, that makes no sense to me, right? Um, so when I did reach out to this person, see, you have to understand, when Snow started to open up and started to come out of the room and spend a little more time with us, he became extremely attached to me. Extremely, right? So if I was working in one room, he had to sit there. If I was wherever I was, he had to be there. He had to constantly keep making eye contact with me. um, and for me, it felt right to reciprocate. It felt right to say, to engage in whatever he's asking from me, or to make that eye contact, or talk to him, or whatever. It felt right, right? So we continued like this for well into a couple of months of him coming home. And then I was told things because his behavior wasn't improving. I was told things like I'm mollycoddling him by constantly allowing him to be in my presence. I'm by making eye contact, by reciprocating his ask for connection. I'm actually um, worsening his separation anxiety because I'm reinforcing some behaviors. I don't even a lot of this is not something that I understand in a way that I guess it's communicated outwardly. um, but I was told that yeah, don't make eye contact, start to keep him, so when I'm working in the room, keep him in another room, um, things like that. And see, you also have to understand, as someone who's brought home a dog who really wants to do right by this dog, and I'm trying the things that come naturally to me, which is, hey, be there for this dog. He's asking for connection, give, it's okay. I'm in my head, I'm also doubting that, okay, it's not worked. I mean, I've had him for a few months and he's still biting people's ankles and knees and he's still attacking every time someone moves. And so maybe I should try it. Maybe I should, keep him outside. Maybe he has to learn to do this on his own, right? That's what I'm hearing. And you do go into a lot of self-doubt. I think the biggest learning I've had is to really trust my instinct, because I do have a fairly strong instinct. I do have a good connection with dogs, and I think my biggest learning has been to trust that now. But at the time, I was like, okay, this whatever I've been trying is not working. Okay, I'm going to try this, right? So keep him separately. Don't make eye contact, and it was insane because now instead of attacking one person, he is also unsure of me, right? So I'm now a trigger. That's a point at which actually he attacked my face, one of those. And I tell this story, I think I've told this story in the past, but he came out, I was sitting on the couch, he came out to lie down next to me, and I just turned around and I smiled at him and I made eye contact and he attacked my face, right? So now, instead of, I had a dog who was attacking one person in these limited situations that I can pinpoint and tell you that these are triggers. But now I have a dog where I actually don't know what his triggers are anymore.
Yeah.
Apparently, right? So now it's come to a space where what I wanted to do was be there for him as a primary caregiver, show up for him. But what I've accidentally done is actually pushed him further away and made him unsure of me too. The one person who he was relying on
Right.
is now, oh shit, who's this person? Like, can I trust you? And that, of course, will percolate everywhere else. If you don't have you talk about secure attachment so much, and just what that can do to someone's quality of life, their what that can do to their behaviors over time, what that can do to just who they are, right? Just giving room for expression. And now I'm not playing that role, right? And that's the time when I actually reached out to Sindoor and said, I can't do this. I don't know how to do this. Like, my experience is not serving me well enough. Um, the information that I'm getting from outside sources has backfired really badly. In fact, we've gone back 1 year now to step one, literally, right? Where this dog now, whatever I've worked to build trust on with this dog, he is now, I have broken that trust clearly. Like, I have not shown up for him. I've broken his trust. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to start, right? And that's when I actually spoke to Sindoor and I said, okay, just you tell me. And she said, just start with CE 101. And
Right.
that's how it started. It was a long winded answer, sorry.
No, no, lots of things, right? So, one that I'm hearing, and I think I spoke about this in one of the previous lives, is how there's a difference between being safe and feeling safe, right? So, when you brought home Snow, of course, you gave him a very safe, like a physical safe space, right? Where there was no physical harm being done to him. And you also definitely gave him the emotional safety, so the feeling of safety where he could start feeling safe, where he could start trusting you. But as it happens with our approach, right, you know you're spoiling your dog a lot, and you're reinforcing their needy behaviors, or asking for attention, asking for connection is not good. They are overly dependent on you. I think all of this is seen as a wrong thing for some reason, as if we don't need people, as if we don't need interaction, we don't need attachment. It's seen as a wrong thing. And I think from feeling safe, probably what I hear you say is he's went back to just being in a physically safe environment, but he didn't have a trusting figure, simply because you couldn't do the things that you instinctively knew you should have done in terms of being there. I'm sorry, I'm like saying whatever you're saying. I'm not
No,
trying to
this is
like point out
fine. No,
any
no,
mistakes
don't
or
worry.
anything.
That is fine. No, no. I mean, this
Yeah.
is what I said. This is what happened. It's perfectly fine.
Yeah. So I think that's such a big learning, right? How important trust is and how trust is built, right? Do you kind of agree that that is one of the biggest learnings in terms of trust? Like, what role trust plays in this kind of a journey?
I think it's all based on that. Like, that's the starting point of a good relationship. If he can't trust me, nothing else is going to fall in place, right? There's always going to be this uncertainty. I mean, imagine living with someone that you don't trust. You don't have the option of walking away. Unfortunately, as a dog, he doesn't have an option of saying this doesn't work for me. Bye.
Yeah.
So he's stuck in a situation. So even when you say he's physically safe, I don't know, because we were still, one of his biggest triggers, I've talked about this so much, one of his biggest triggers is anyone walking into the room, right? We were still doing that. So in his head, I don't think there was a safety angle that he felt at all in
Right.
those first couple of months. I don't think, because you're told that you need to stop behaviors, right? That's it. You
Right.
have your dog is expressing a certain behavior. Either you want to stop the behavior, you want to modify or change the behavior, right? There's no asking what's causing this behavior, right? There's no asking what is in the environment, what are the people doing, what are the other dogs doing that's continuing to fuel this behavior in this dog. We never look at it like that, right? And I think the more complicated part with Snow, which again Sindhu kind of opened my eyes to, was, hey, clinically he's okay. In that you've done your basic blood tests and you've done your kidney liver functions. He's okay there. But all of the behaviors that you're telling me seem very similar to a dog who's having thyroid issues, right? And I was like, wait, what? Like, I never even considered that this would be a cause for behaviors like this, right? And it wasn't the primary cause, of course not. All of these factors add up, right? There's no one primary cause. So but it's a very determining factor. And if you look at some of the behaviors associated with thyroid um, dysfunction, for lack of a better word, it is behaviors that he was sort of expressing, which is, he was moody, he was unpredictable, he was aggressive, all of those things. So I think when we look at the behaviors that Snow was expressing, it's so easy. Like, the number of people who've told me that I'm spoiling him, the number of people who have told me that he needs to get used to it, so leave him and go. For the first couple of months, he refused to step out of the house because when we first got him, he also had severe pancreatitis, so he had to be admitted in the hospital. So he was terrified of the harness and stepping out of the house. But I was told, yeah, but a good dog walks twice a day, right? So again, I'm questioning my own skills as a pet parent. Forget as a rescuer or anything else, right? As a pet parent, am I not able to do the basic, right? What I've been told is the most basic thing, right? So there's a lot of that comes in. And I think it's the way that these messages are packaged is so appealing, because it's so easy to, it's positioned as such an easy, like a quick way to get what you want, right?
Yeah.
But the whole aspect of trust, how can you train trust? I mean, if I'm living with a partner and I can't trust him, what am I going to train him into trusting? I mean,
Trusting.
I don't know, how does that make it? Doesn't make sense to me in any way. But I have to tell you that having just focused, like, put aside everything else and having just focused on what is it that you need from me, what can I do to make you feel safe and help you, right? What is it that you need? Do you need me to keep people out of the door? And when when someone comes in, that it's not a sudden, right? There is, he is able to process that there's someone behind the door, there is a noise that's made before he comes in. Is it that, right? And ended up being really simple things like that, right? Which required no training whatsoever. Because again, you have to understand that Snow is dealing with so many emotions that I can't even fathom. And it took, as we went through the journey of being together, it about a year and a half into me adopting him, when we started to work on, building this trust between him and I. um, the first time, and I remember this so clearly because I just like started sobbing, but I was sitting on the bed and I was working, and Snow jumped up next to me and he was trying to be cute and play and all, and like, I love those moments, right, where those few seconds where he just lets down his guard, like that just made everything worth it. But in one of those moments, and that was the first time he did that, which was he rolled over on his back and he was trying to be cute. And I have a video of this because I found it so cute. I was like, I want to take a video. I actually have a video of this. And that's the first time I saw these scars across his chest, right? Oh, I'm feeling like I'm choking up just saying this because I haven't talked about that in a long time. But it was a reminder to me that I don't know what all this dog has been through, right? I really have to work extra hard to build trust with him again, because humans have done such a disservice to him. They are so much at fault. And I didn't want to be the person who then rushed this process, or who only thought about myself in this, right? But having said that, it it is extremely frustrating. It was extremely frustrating living with this dog because I could not leave my house. Okay, I could not leave him with anyone else. I literally for 2 years didn't go anywhere, right? And that took a huge toll on me because I was like, am I supposed to live the rest of my life like this? Like, I can't do this. I seriously didn't think. And I know I reached out to you saying, hey, I'm in a really bad place. I don't know what to do, because I mean, there were thoughts in my head where I would try and pacify myself, thinking about when my grandparents had dogs and they never traveled and their dog just lived with them for 14 years. So I'm sure I could do it. Like, I'm trying to pacify myself to say that this is the life, this is the responsibility that I've taken on to bring home a dog who's aggressive and who's displaying aggressive behaviors, who's still attacking a year and a half into adopting him. And maybe this is what it is. Maybe I'm just going to live with a dog who is reactive, who is aggressive. That's it, right? I just have to make peace with that. But unfortunately, that I it's not a thought that sat well with me. It actually put me in a very dark space, and I had to actually really work on myself to say, okay, even if I had to do that, even if it came down to me never having to travel or never having to step out of my house or whatever, right, for more than whatever few minutes at that point, I still had to work on myself to be able to do that, because where I was finding myself was getting extremely angry with this dog, was getting extremely frustrated with this dog, was feeling a lot of resentment, unfortunately, right? And that's as candid as I can be about it, because that's the truth. And I was like, what have I done? Did I make the right decision, right? So it really takes you down a really dark path when you live with rescue dogs, and especially if you go into that relationship already having a checklist of what this dog should look like and behave like and all of those things. That makes it even harder. But yeah, it took me down a pretty
Yeah,
Um,
I
yeah,
remember that. I remember our conversation, and you used the same words in our conversation as well, right? Like you would use the same word of, I'm starting to feel resentful, and I don't want to feel that towards him because I know it's not his fault, but I am feeling like this, and I don't want to feel that. Um, and the story has a good ending. He did start staying.
hey, I can leave the house for 5 days now. Just FYI, before anyone is like, "Oh, I'm out of this life." No, no, it has a good ending.
Yeah, it has a good ending. But you brought up another great point, right? I think we end up having these goals of having certain behaviors or not having certain behaviors by our dogs, right? Like that ends up, and I don't think it's anyone's fault, simply because also in this case there was risk factor also, right? In terms of risk to the people around, and you have other dogs as well, right? Which means that it's a matter of, okay, fine, is this safe, firstly, right? So I think it's okay to have the needs of the safety needs of everybody met, but when we end up having behavior changes as goals, I think there is a lot of frustration involved, right? Because you're not getting there that quickly. I mean, with Zoe also, you're aware of Zoe's story, right? Like with her constant,
Yes.
agitation in the evenings, and I didn't know where this was going, and I was like, how do I just help her, and how do I just stop that? Because at one point it started getting frustrating, right? She would constantly get restless.
Yeah.
And so I think it's fair that we end up having these behavior goals, because I think they somehow trigger something for us as well, right? I think, you know, for me as a professional, when Zoe was not, comfortable, it would trigger my own feelings of, am I even a good professional? Do I, can I go out and then be a professional, call myself a professional, when my own dog is uncomfortable, right? So I think a lot of these behaviors tend to trigger something in us as well. So I think um, how we respond to it matters, and then how we address it in the relationship also matters, right? And I think with Snow, what I saw when we were working with separation anxiety, I feel like you are very self-aware about your emotions, but also not exhibiting it towards him. And I think anger and frustration can become very toxic very quickly, right? Especially in a relationship. So I feel like what I saw, it didn't lead to that kind of a manifestation of your emotions. And I feel like you were quite self aware of where it is going and where you don't want it to lead, in terms of, and I think that is so important, right? And I think that only comes with emotional regulation that we keep talking about for dogs. And I think there's so much of it necessary for us as well when you're talking about these things. Sorry, it went into a very completely different thing, but I
No,
don't
but
know, do you feel like,
yeah, but on that point, you yeah, self-aware, and you have to be emotionally regulated, and that takes a lot of work for adults who have had a rough childhood. Um, so I think what became really interesting to me was being able to pause in those moments. See, because you have to understand that I was living with a dog who would, every time someone entered the room, he would attack. And this happened like 20 times a day, right? So I'm like, I mean, I don't know. I I'm frustrated. I can't say that I didn't let my emotions get the better of me, because I know I have said, Snow, stop it, in a fairly stern voice, like enough to scare him, right? And that it doesn't come from a place of, I want to scare you into stopping behavior. I'm just frustrated. I don't know. It's just an outburst, right? And that's where this whole thing of, hey, you need to sort yourself out. Like this, you can't be doing this. I'm not benefiting. I'm not helping the dog, and it's actually taking a toll on me, because I have so much regret then, because I'm sitting and crying for days after that, saying, oh my god, like poor dog's already scared, and I'm like raising my voice at him. So it's like such a this thing. But the other thing that happened when I started to work myself, and started to understand all of this and how complicated it is, was that I started to realize that a lot of the triggers, or whatever was triggering me about his behavior, actually wasn't triggering me. I have grown up in a way that if you weren't told, if you didn't do what you were told, that led to a negative consequence, right? So in my head, if this dog is not doing what I'm told, I'm immediately reacting not like how I would, but how I have seen as a child. And you don't, because you're in such a emotionally dysregulated state, I'm not even able to tell the difference about what, how would I authentically want to respond to this dog versus how have I been conditioned or what have I seen growing up. And that's coming out, right? So the minute I was able to say, okay, is this, I mean, the fact that this behavior is triggering me is my problem. It is really not the dog's problem. I can't put that on the dog, right?
Yeah.
Where my responsibility lies is, of course, figuring out why the hell am I still putting this dog in this situation where he's constantly getting triggered. And second of all, which is a very personal journey, is why am I reacting to things that actually aren't triggers to me, right?
Yeah.
What in my brain is just so hardwired that I need to take a pause. And it's crazy to me when I've been able to do that now, where I'm able to just pause in that minute, right? I, c- I can feel myself wanting to respond better. And the remarkable part of all of this is I can see the same thing happening with Snow, where instead of it being just and just a reaction, right? There's this pause and a bit of a slowing down, which gives me so much insight into, hey, my brain is processing, give me a second to figure out. And there is so many times in a day now, hey, he walks away from triggers which I never thought we would come to. Because see, the triggers that I was dealing with aren't or weren't restricted to external triggers, in that they were not outside the home,
Yeah.
right? Which makes it even harder because you can't escape this trigger in many situations, that you're
Yeah.
living with the trigger, right?
Yeah.
So for him to be able to, it's beautiful. First of all, like, actually, like, see his brain working in so many instances, right? And then he'll, like, it just happened yesterday, he got triggered by, he gets triggered by things like if one of the dogs is making that scratching sound on the bed, that's a huge trigger. And before, what he would do is, and I didn't, when the behaviors first start happening, I didn't know it was a trigger, right? It takes time to figure out what these triggers are. Before I figured that out, he would actually go and bite the dog at the back. So now, right? So it happened yesterday with one of the dogs, and of course, I know what to do with the minute hand signals and all of that goes up, and you'll see some videos of that. But the other thing is, I can, the minute that happens, now he's looking at me, right? And it goes back to that my first couple of months with him, and I think how different our lives would have been. I mean, I love what the journey we've had because I've had to put myself through work, and that's bettered me in so many ways. But I'm just thinking those first couple of months when he came home was so crucial, right? Imagine if I had actually just used those opportunities where he's asking for connection to actually reassure him and say, hey, I'm here for you. Because what I see now is when I'm able to say, hey, it's okay, it's okay. And he's like, okay, fine. Like, there is so much trust in what I'm saying right now,
Yeah.
which makes life so beautiful, because there is this connection that we have, and that is overriding his triggers. It's overriding, he's in such a better place to acknowledge the trigger for what it is, and understand that this is not life and death for me. I have the option of walking away, right? And I see myself in him a lot. Like, even today, I work with a few dogs who are labeled as aggressive in one of the shelter cum clinics. And so I go there some afternoons and I spend time with them, or I walk them and stuff like that, right? And there, someone was extremely rude to me, and so, like, it's coming so naturally now to just pause a minute, right? uh, assess assess this situation, right? And I'm able to
Yeah.
process, saying, who is this person, do they matter to me? Like, I'm asking pertinent questions that help me put context to this situation, which I can see Snow doing now with all of the things that he faces. He's able to see a trigger for what it is, which I don't think a dog who is emotionally dysregulated is simply unable to do that. I mean, they don't have the ability to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think when we ourselves go through this journey, right, in terms of like what it takes to heal, what trauma actually, means to us, and how we respond to triggers, how we, like, we kind of excuse our behaviors when we are in that dysregulated space, right? So I think when we go through that, I think, phase or that journey, I think it becomes even more easier for us to understand our dogs, probably because they are going through a very similar journey, right, in terms of overcoming whatever it is, right? It need not be a big trauma. It could just be, I remember, I think I was reading some book on PTSD or complex PTSD, and they would be like, there are traumas with a capital T, but there are traumas with a small t that keep
Yeah,
happening, over and over. And that also matters, right? So I think it doesn't matter what kind of an emotional experience our dogs are having, but they are going through a journey of understanding and processing that experience, right? And the more we're able to understand it from that perspective, I think the more we are able to be empathetic towards them. Because I think if we haven't experienced it ourselves, I feel like it might be a little difficult to be empathetic then, right? Because how do you understand what is a healing journey? How do you understand that trauma manifests in certain ways? How do you understand these things? And I feel like when you're relating your journey and Snow's journey and how you both react, respond, cope, I think it brings in another aspect of empathy that, of course, a lot of us tend to have, but to truly understand it, I think if you have experienced something similar, not that I'm saying everyone should experience trauma, but I think we tend to understand what trauma really means if we have had that, journey ourselves too. Uh, there's a comment. I'll just take that.
oh,
This ability to
yeah,
put a break and pause and think has some really interesting science behind it. The ability for the prefrontal cortex to put a break on an instinctive fear response by the amygdala. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. I think if I am right, and Anushri, you can correct me. Amygdala is the fear response, and it immediately triggers, and no other learning pathways
correct.
matter when
Yes.
it is amygdala. But if you're working on this processing, and if you're working on this scoping and regulation, I think the you can reduce that fear response that comes from amygdala. And then, so that's something that we do work on, right? And I think a big part of it is working on triggers. But as you said, the whole, like, a lot of Snow's triggers were in the house, right? And I think you just moved your house a few months back, and you mentioned in one of the conversations that just by changing the bed location,
Yeah.
that Snow's bed location, things changed a lot. Do you want to share more about that?
Yeah, yeah. So in the old house, actually, Saud, the more I've been thinking about this, there were so many things that smaller changes that we actually made. But this is an interesting one. So, in the previous house, um, the main bedroom, he slept closer to the door, and then, but this that room had two doors. So you
So I
had
think
an entrance.
they'll be able to see. I'll play.
Sorry.
I'll play the video, the one
Oh
where
yes,
he,
you can do that. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
so they'll understand where it is placed. Okay.
yeah.
So I'm
Actually, if
playing
you can
the,
just put the video on and just pause it, then I'll just explain where the door is.
yeah.
Yeah, okay. So you can see the door, but what's interesting and what I'm realizing also now is when you look opposite this door is another door that goes out to the garden. Okay, so see that's another thing that I didn't comprehend at that time, that we had two doors here. So a dog is fearful of people walking through the door. Now I see daily two doors. That's one thing that changed. But what's interesting in this house is very naturally. Snow's bed now is on this side, so on the opposite side, which has created a lot more distance between the front door and him. And I cannot tell you what a difference that has made, because he is sleeping so much deeper, right? Because even if you look at this video, he is sleeping, but he's awake. So he's in his bed, but he's awake, and that's how he would sleep. So he was a very light sleeper. And of course, at the time, I was like, "Oh, this is the option." What I never even considered that I should probably create some more distance, which now seems obvious to me. But but when we thankfully when we moved into the new house, that automatically happened. And the minute I saw that change, I was like, oh, okay. So it's the small things I need to start looking into even more, right? It's a really small things. The other thing is that um, we have a study that actually overlooks the entrance of the building. I mean, the entrance of the block. So there are people who live in this block who will pass by, and it's French window, so it's massive, right? So you can see right through. They can see us, hear us, all of those things. And when we first moved into the house, Luna was very uncertain because there was a lot of noise that would come in from there. And barks to the rescue. I was like, okay, I don't want to start off in this house her being scared. So I'm just going to close this. Like, I don't even want to open the studio for the next couple of months. Like, I have no use for it. If one of us are working out from there, you go in there and you close the door, right? Don't.
Right.
And now she'll go there and she'll watch people. So I mean, it's the small things where she is now the fear never got she never started to feel fearful, because once, if she had started, let's say she had a couple of bad experiences with people walking, being loud there, she's always going to be fearful of that space, right? Until I do something different. And what do I do? It's so much easier to not let her have a fearful association with something than it is for me to, okay, you're really scared, okay, let me try and reassure you, and I'll keep the doors open, right? But it doesn't work, right? So it's so many small things. But coming back to Snow's story, this this video that I took that you're going to play now, I think it was about a year and a half into adopting Snow. So by this time, there were lots of bites and lots of attacks to humans and dogs that have happened, which I hadn't recorded for the simple reason that I genuinely did not believe it would get better. I just thought this was what it was going to look like. Uh, when I started recording was when the behaviors that I was seeing seemed less intense. And in my head, I was like, ooh, that's improvement. So I was like, okay, now I'm going to start recording, because at this point, I had already started my barks journey and I was already doing back bed, right? So I was also, oh my God, like, this is working? Like, what? I never thought like I would ever be able to move past that, right? But so for context, yeah, we had 1.5 years of no videos but of lots of biting, and this was taken when the intensity had reduced, but there was still bites. Like, I think in this similar period, Snow had bitten Arun quite badly on the knee. So it's not. So yeah, that's the context for this particular.
Okay. So I'm playing the first video now. Okay.
Yeah.
I think for context, I think Anushree's partner is entering into the room, right?
Yes.
Okay. You want to, I think we have spoken about it, right? So anyone entering the room was a trigger
Yeah.
for Snow. And for him, I think where, Arun is entering from is quite a blindsided entry
Blind
for,
spot. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right?
It is.
For
Yes.
Snow. So that could be even more,
Yeah.
you know, triggering.
Yeah.
Plus also the fact that he was probably resting, or maybe he was not so restful also. So that's a bit of a question mark.
Yeah.
And by this time this had probably built up also quite a bit, right? And I think by now, if I remember correctly with our conversations, Arun also was quite unsure of his
Oh
interactions with
yeah.
Snow as well,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the context of this video. Shall I play the next one?
Yeah.
Okay, and that one was immediately after this.
Yeah. Like literally 10 minutes after.
Okay.
So same setting.
Yeah.
Everything's it's crazy to me.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite videos. I think I will never forget that. Would you want to explain what you did?
Uh, sure. Um, okay. So one of the things that the first thing that I learned when I started studying at Barks was the power of reassurance, the power of literally showing up for your dog, being there for your dog, letting them know it's okay, taking on the responsibility for anything uncertain. And it started with things like, also, we had a big balcony, and if the neighbors were there, my dogs were like, how dare you? And when you have 5 dogs, it's like, yeah, how dare you charge, stuff like that. So I think it started with things like that. And the hand signal to me is one of the most remarkable things. And it's now that I understand the significance and the versatility of this hand signal, I also see how much we use the hand signal, not just with my dogs. I've used it on Arun. I've used it with subconsciously, just in a way to say it's okay, or So for me, what I was trying to do in these videos was really see. It's a year and a half into it. I'd been a couple of months of unlearning some of the things that I had done with Snow. So again, building trust. So at this point, we actually were in a very good space with our relationship. Like, there was this thing that where whenever he was overwhelmed, he would look at me, and I was able to help him, right, in the best way that I could at the time. So the reason that I captured this video is that, see, a year and a half before, this would have been a bite. A year and a half after, without a hand signal, this is a growl. With the hand signal, it's almost nothing. Now, I'm not, by any standards, am I not saying that this dog didn't feel scared in the moment. I'm not saying that. But what I'm trying to communicate is that there are many instances and situations in our day-to-day lives where things scare us. And what I really want is someone to be there for me and reassure me that things will be okay. It has changed. The last couple of years has changed my life, because I have also started seeking that from my own relationships, and I have also started to understand the need to do that for someone else, or be that person for someone else. And it really is to let Snow know, hey, you don't have to handle it, right? I'll take care of it, right? I'll be there. I'll protect you. That's my job. You don't have to feel like you need to defend yourself and me, right? Because there were instances where if any dog came near me, that he would go near them, right? So it was also a way for me to communicate to him, to let him know that this is okay. I'm not saying stop. I'm not using tone at all, because there are moments like this that can be quite high stress, and I didn't want my words to carry my true emotions if I was scared in that moment, or if I whatever I was feeling, right? And so the hand signal has been our savior, right? I use it when I get up. I use it when I have to leave a room. I use it when I have to leave the house. It has worked wonders for our separation anxiety that he issues that he had. But yeah, that's my interpretation of the hand signal. If you want to add to it, I'm sure you'll have a great point of view as well.
I think you covered everything. And I think a big part of how I have also kind of evolved in my relationships has like reassurance has a lot to do with it, right? Like a lot, where I think we normally seek it, right? Like we normally also, when you're having a day-to-day challenge, when I can see that for myself too, in terms of when I'm in a stressful situation, when I even go out, right? Like just, and I'm too overwhelmed with sensory, stimulation, and I need just a little bit of reassurance, someone to be there, where I'm not feeling like I'm facing this all by myself, and I'm all alone. And of course, my journey is my own journey. And that's the other thing that I want to talk about also. But when you have a support system, when there's someone there for you, I think the journey becomes a lot more easier. I feel a lot more easy to cope with if you are having struggle. And I think reassurance did a whole difference for me when I was trying to overcome my triggers, my insecurities, and I can see why it kind of works, right? And I think a lot of it, like, I mean, hand signal, obviously, but I think building the relationship and being there is so crucial, because I think if you didn't have that kind of relationship, if you didn't have that trusting connection, and if he didn't believe you,
Exactly.
I think it wouldn't work, right? Because if you don't have that kind of a relationship there, I don't know, I mean, of course, we use hand signal a lot with street dogs and stuff like that, where we are trying to establish that relation too, right? So I think it's also a two-way, bit here, right? In terms of the hand signal builds the relationship, but relationship also
Yeah.
matters when you're working on the hand signal and reassurance. But yeah, I think that is what I wanted to add. I think if you didn't have a good relationship, I don't know if it would have worked as much. And I think Arun does use hand signal too,
Oh yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You want to
Yeah.
share that?
Yeah. Actually, you said something very interesting. You said that when we are also in uh, faced with challenges, that you seek out reassurance, right? Now, I just want to add a different point of view here. Not all of us understand that it's okay to ask for reassurance, right? I grew up in a place where I didn't get that. So I grew up being extremely strong and independent. So my first line of defense is I need to deal with this on my own. I don't need anybody. I can do this on my own. So it took a long time for those walls to come down and for me to be able to ask for reassurance. Right? Now dogs, many of them do this naturally. When they start to develop a relationship with you, they seek this reassurance quite naturally. But there are other dogs who don't know that they can ask for reassurance because I have not been there for them in the past. Does that make sense? Like I have not shown up. So they don't think they can rely on me. And yet we are living together and I don't know, we have a relationship. Of course we do. But reassurance and feeling like you can ask someone to be there for you, I think that's extremely powerful. So I think it's important to acknowledge that yes, when we are in tough times, you want to be able to do that, but not all of us naturally. Yes, naturally we had the ability, but not all of us uh, know consciously that you can do that. And then when you're able to put that in perspective, where hey, a dog might need reassurance but they may not know how to ask for it, so give them room and continue to work on your relationship so that they know that, oh, okay, I can, right? Like open up those doors for your dog, and you can only do that when you truly build this relationship on a strong foundation of trust and empathy and communication and respect. Like it doesn't happen otherwise.
Yeah, I think so. I was about to ask you that question, right? I was going to play the devil's advocate and then ask you, uh, doesn't this become make your dogs very dependent, right? Like, because that's something that we hear a lot, right? Like,
Yeah,
your dogs are being too dependent on you, or what if you're not around, right?
yeah.
And the dogs are faced with similar triggers. Do you have any response to that?
Mm, see, I'll give you an example of Arun and I. Let's say that I was really struggling with something. I'm able to go to him, not because he can solve my problems, because possibly he can't solve my problems, but I just need him to understand where I'm coming from. I just need to possibly just get it off my chest. And the space that puts me in, knowing in my heart that this person is there for me irrespective, has uh, created such a sense of security and ease in me, because I'm able to pass on this. It's I'm not alone,
Yeah.
and I don't know how it would be any different for our dogs. I mean, how, just because, I mean, a dog is, let's say in snow situation, he's literally saying, oh my god, I can't do this anymore, like I can't, and I'm able to say, hey, it's okay, you don't have to.
Yeah.
In my head, that's really, he's struggling, I'm able to help, and he's like, ah, okay, that's cool, you can handle it. And you see that the more he's able to rely on me, the more confident he's becoming, the more trusting he's becoming, the more curious he's becoming, the more he wants to make friends, the more he wants to meet new people, right? He's, I mean, a few of our friends, he went and asked them to pet him for the first time. I mean, like, I don't buy into this. I mean, if someone is asking for reassurance, they're coming from a place where they're feeling insecure. right? You want to make them feel secure, because that's when behaviors associated with the feelings of insecurity don't really aren't there anymore, right? Because I'm seeing a certain behavior that's coming from a space of feeling fearful. If I'm able to be there for you and you feel less scared, hey, your behavior changes, right? So I don't buy into that. I don't know if I did a good job of justifying my stance, but
No, I
yeah.
think I agree there, right? I think one is you mentioned about how you developed this idea of being independent and solving situations on your own. And I think a lot of it has to do with how socially we are told be independent, right? It's in fact, I think, lauded to be, independent, and if you can solve
Strong,
your problem. Yeah,
strong, independent.
yeah, and if you're not seeking help, if you're not seeking support, you're doing so well. And I think it's so inbuilt in, and we are conditioned into that, right? And I think
And it's
th-
seriously so isolating as a feeling, let me tell you. For someone who's lived like that for 30 years, it's extremely isolating. Like, it's not healthy. We are social animals. We need to have this interaction. We need to be able to rely on other people and other beings, and so are dogs. Sorry to cut you off, but that was just like
no, agreed. I mean, I
just
think I
life
was going
test.
I was going there, but yeah, so that was one thing. Shall I bring up the other video of Snow and Arun?
So this is now,
Yeah.
and it's the sweetest. I love this video.
Is this in the new house?
Yeah, this is now. Kapsi, he's asking even there, and I put my hand out even there. And he's like, ah, okay, you're okay. I put my hand out again because there was some sound from the outside. But see, he's looking at me and he's like, ah, okay, I'm safe. So I'm gonna ask you for more pets, right?
Yeah, I think
You
this is so powerful, right?
oh,
I think
possibly.
and you mentioned that he's attacked you, but he would mostly attack Arun, right?
Yeah,
Arun
yeah.
has
Arun,
been
multiple times a day.
right. So
Multiple
to
times a
then
day.
move to this space, I think is huge. And I think I want to talk a little bit on that. Do you have time? Are you like
No, yeah, I have time.
okay? So I wanted to so we spoke in the beginning about rushing to a particular space, right? Like rushing to a particular goal. And you have had Snow for what, about 4 years now,
Yeah.
approximately.
Oh.
um, do you think firstly that the other approaches would get you here? One. Second is, do you think if we had rushed the process, it would have been okay on Snow in terms of his well-being? And do you think it is normal for anyone to take this long to get to the space that you're currently in?
See, you asked me so many questions, I forgot the first one. Okay, I'll go backwards because I remember the
Yeah,
last one. See, before I started to study at Parks, I had a timeline to it. And not just me, but other people in my house also had a timeline. Oh, it's been so long and he's still biting. Oh, it's been so long. Right? So yeah, I also had that in my head, that he should be fine by now. I had that in my head, right? Um, so I think the journey has really been heavy, no? Sorry, that is my own thoughts. It's also me having gone down the journey of mm, figuring out myself and understanding that I couldn't put a timeline to this. Like, how? I don't know how to, like, I don't know how I'm gonna feel three 3 days down the line. So then how do I don't know this about me, but I'm setting a timeline for a dog and I don't fully understand what the dog's going through, right? So I think this timeline concept is a bit scary because you cannot rush these things. When you're dealing with emotions, you're dealing with trauma, you can you can enable a being with all of the information. You can enable them with all of the skills that you possibly know to cope, but the decision to to embrace those skills, or the decision to be in a to not the decision to be in a good state of mind, but the process of getting to a better state of mind where they're able to take in the information you're providing them. You can't rush that, you can't put a timeline on it, and that decision lies with that being alone. No one else, like no one can come and tell me you've been in therapy for 3 years now, that's it, like you should be fine by now. It's stupid when I say it about myself, but yet we're saying it about another dog.
Yeah.
And for most people who put timelines to this, they don't even understand the depth of emotions that a dog can experience, right? Just because we're saying that Snow is was a biting dog, it does not mean that we didn't have good moments. It does not mean that all the time it was always stressful, right? So there's so many things that coexist together. A dog can feel scared, but a dog can feel happiness also, right? You can't box these things up. So when there is such a range of emotions that are involved, in my personal opinion, I don't think anyone should feel the right to dictate what that journey looks like. I don't think anyone has the right to do that. Outside of the being themselves, I think that is a very personal decision to to start to feel okay about certain things. Like I remember, even though, and this is interesting because even though I was logically able to process certain things, it took me a long time for my body to physically feel safe, if that makes sense. And that was not a decision that I could take basis information that was given to me or basis interactions. It was a feeling that my body had to just be at ease. And I can't put a timeline on that. I can't rush that. I can't decide when that happens or when that should happen. I actually don't see how it's any different for Snow. There are, and with Snow, he's very sensitive, right? Like, if I there was one instance where Arun and I had an argument, and um, Snow jumped on the bed, and in my in the heat of the moment I said, Snow, can you please get off the bed? Right? That's all I said. And he just looked at me and he walked off. He jumped off the bed, he walked into the sofa, and that was the first night. And I think this happened about a year a year after bringing him home, or maybe sometime after that. That was the first night he chose to sleep in the hall and not in the room with me, right? And I'm like crying and saying, I'm sorry, please come back and all that. But see, you have to, for an animal who's looking at me as their primary caregiver, if I'm having my own emotional outbursts and taking it out on my dogs, and then still deciding that, oh, they should have been fine by now, it doesn't add up, right? And it's very dangerous because you're pushing a dog to to experience things that they simply may not be ready to do, and that's not fair, right? Like, if I had to face a trigger, I mean, Snow lives with triggers every day, right? There's certain triggers, unfortunately, I can't get rid of, but he's in such a good space. He's like, oh, okay. Like, he looks at me and I'm like, hey, it's okay. And it's crazy to me because my house helps at home have started doing this. So they're like, it's okay, it's okay. So the whole day they're like, it's okay. And all my dogs are peacefully living. So I don't have the need to anymore to feel like I need to put a timeline or try and rush things or force my dogs into stressful situations. I don't feel that pressure at all anymore.
Yeah. So I think that is what I was like wanting to ask that time, right? I think any journey of processing an emotional experience, and we don't know what Snow went through before he came to you at all, right? And even if he didn't go through anything extreme,
Yeah, yeah,
um it is his own journey of coping with it and dealing with it, and he needs to be ready for it and in a space for it, right? I don't even think it's such a voluntary decision saying that, oh, I'm not ready for
yeah,
it
yeah,
today, and then suddenly it's such a I think you need to be in the right state of mind, right space, right people, and you need
yeah.
to feel safe. So much of it goes into it that I think by trying to rush this kind of a journey for any dog, anybody, I think any individual can just put them back into a space where they can't trust, right?
Yeah.
I think if you would probably rush it and then push him to be a certain way, then it would just put him back in terms of where he was, where he couldn't trust people around him. And I think that is so important to remember, right? I don't think the journey needs to have a timeline, obviously, in terms of, and I think the goals also, I'm guessing, changed quite a bit over a period of time, right? In terms of, it was no more about behaviors. I'm guessing if today's Snow would show similar behaviors of growling, I think it's more about how can you make him feel safer than, yeah, I don't want these behaviors. And I think it's more about how do you meet the need and how do you ensure your dog is feeling safe than the behavior should disappear, right? So then this is a journey till the end, right? I don't think there's going to be a timeline at any point.
No, it's also I start to understand that I'm setting I'm setting goals based on my understanding for a dog who's probably going through something else. It's not even in alignment, right? It's just I just decided that this is what I'm aiming for. It doesn't make sense. Um, but I think it's also sorry. I think it also is interesting because you your dog starts to understand when this trust is built and when they're able to that you see certain they give you certain cues that they're ready for certain things. And I think if you're able to see those and use those opportunities, that's the right way to do it. Like, wait, like there's no rush. I mean, for Snow to go out on walks after I let go of the notion of a good dog walks twice a day, and a good pet parent can get their dog to walk twice a day. It's great because, I mean, you've seen videos of him at the farm. He's great, right? Now, he does not want to go for a walk very often in the city. Uh, But the truth is, neither do I. Like, I mean, unless it's like at a non-peak time in Cubbon Park where I might enjoy a stroll and it's peaceful. But I'm forcing this dog to walk on a main road which has like 300 vehicles, some 700 dogs, and luckily they're friends. But that's it's obviously an exaggeration on my part. But I'm just saying that there is so much happening, and then I cannot say, oh no, but you're fine in every other area, so you should be able to walk now. Like that's the big next goal, right? I think it's a bit unfair to have a dog live by these set of things that you have decided when, to be honest, we don't have that for ourselves. Like, we don't put so much pressure on ourselves to do that. Oh, by this time you should have done this. At least I don't. Not anymore, right? Now there's this question of, hey, I want to enjoy my life, I want to value what I have, I really just want to be at peace, right? And for our dogs, I mean, what's more important than feeling safe and feeling a sense of peace, right? So I think we don't even do it for ourselves, where we're like, I mean, imagine, okay, if I was making my own list, that's something, but someone else made a list and gave it to me and said, oh, by this time you should do this and you should behave like this. Like, I would be like, hey bro, no, like, no thanks, right?
Yeah.
And it's also, the other thing that comes to mind is, I wonder how a dog would feel towards a person who was constantly breaking their trust and putting them in situations that they simply weren't ready for, or that was still triggering to them. Like, I know I I don't like people who do that to me. I don't make I mean, I don't maintain relationships with people who put that pressure on me and break my trust, or like I can't maintain a genuine relationship with them. And here's your dog to whom you are a primary caregiver. So if you can't do that for them, and if you can't be their advocate, then that's a huge disservice to them. And what quality of life do they have?
Yeah. I think one of the primary responsibilities, I don't think it's walks, I don't think it's behavioral training. I think it's truly to build the trust and safe space. I think everything else follows, right? Like
Yes.
you start reading your dog, you start understanding what your dog's needs are, but it only comes after you have built a safe space and build that trust. I think that is such such a key component, I think. And I think that's I think our primary responsibility, apart from obviously taking care of their food and like
Of
shelter
course.
and medical needs. I think this is very, very important. I think it gets overlooked quite a bit in a bit to do all of the other things that you're told to do, train your dog to do this and do socialization and then do xyz things. I think we forget this is such a fundamental part of any relationship. I think if we have any relationship, be it with
Yeah.
friends, romantic relationship, or with parents, children, whatever, I think trust is such a key component. And I think we forget that with dogs, right? And I think that's the primary responsibility in my opinion.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, when we've been able to do that, like half of the things that we thought were problem behaviors don't even exist. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so I think just, yeah, building that trust with each of your dogs is, I think, the
Yeah.
starting thing of a good
Yeah.
relationship.
Okay, I have last two things. I won't keep you longer.
Okay.
And
Okay.
if anyone has any comments and questions, you can ask now because we'll be ending soon. My one question was, you also displayed a very good point of how you can repair a relationship, right? With snow,
Mm.
you were building one, then it broke a little bit, and then you built again. And I just wanted to point that out, that when you are invested in a relationship, when you are invested in connection, and when you are trying to meet your dog's needs, I think repairing becomes easier. I wouldn't say it was easy on you. I'm not saying the journey was easy, but it just becomes easier because your goals are that now, right? You're not having a very different goal. Your goal is now to build the trust. So I think the repairing kind of becomes easier. And I think every time you've had those moments also where you have been dysregulated, or there have been situations where you weren't able to connect with snow, I think over a period, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, over a period of time it becomes easier and easier to repair that relationship. And I think it's also unfair to put too much pressure on ourselves saying that you will never do wrong, right? I think we are human and we go through our situations too. um, and so we might make mistakes in the process, but I think repairing also is a key component in this, right? I think we shouldn't be leaving it at, okay, I broke that trust and I can't do anything about it now. I think you can always repair it. And I felt like that kind of stood out for me.
Yeah, and I also think the notion of what that repairing looks like needs a little bit of rethinking, because it's one thing to say, oh, I'm sorry I did this, and then go and like hug your dog and kiss your dog because you're feeling bad about it. But how about repairing it in a way that your dog understands and would appreciate, right? Because that's like when one of these incidents happened, Snow, the way that he wanted to process or seek connection, I don't know how, I don't want to put words to it, but he came, like slept right, stuck to me and slept, and I didn't, in any other moment I would have taken the liberty to pet him or whatever, and I was like, I'm doing that for me, I'm petting him for me. I don't think that's what he wants from me. He just wants to sleep next to me, and that's fair, right? So even when you should repair, and you should, do your best to make up for your dog, and they're so forgiving, honestly, like you said, because the stronger that your relationship continues to become, uh, they actually sweetly are willing to let go of the times that I do slip up. They're like, okay, because there have been so many other good situations where we build trust and we have a good relationship. So I think, of course, we can't be perfect, like you said, but also understanding what does how would my dog like for me to rebuild this trust, not what would I like to do to make myself feel better about a situation that happened. I think that
Yeah.
also is important.
Yeah. So I think obviously how do you repair and rebuild is critical. And I think that's a whole conversation in itself. And
Yeah.
it's so individual to the dogs, right? Like I think where every dog is different in what they are seeking when you're rebuilding that connection. But the last thing that I wanted to point out was, I think when you started the conversation about when Snow came into the house was how you were trying to pacify yourself that this is it, right? Like this is the dog you have, this is what you need to live with. And I feel like a lot of times when you try and make peace with a situation, you're obviously doing a disservice to yourself because you're neglecting your own needs because you clearly are not comfortable in that space, right? Like emotionally you're not comfortable,
Yeah.
but I feel like it can also be a disservice to the dog, right? So for example, if you never went on this journey to help Snow, I think he wouldn't be where he is today then, right? And I think trying to just accept that just like this, like this is the trigger and this is how it is, this is how it is going to be. Because I know a lot of people tend to do that, right? Like a lot of dog parents or even like human parents tend to be like, this is how it is, right?
Yeah.
I don't think I can work on this anymore and I don't think I can change this anymore. But I feel like while you're doing the service to yourself, you're also not helping your dog because your dog is clearly struggling. And if
Um,
you're not working on it, then you're not really helping your dog. So I felt like that was the other bit, right? Where I
yeah.
think trying to make peace with the situation is not going to help anybody at the end of it.
Yeah. You're right. That's a really, really insightful point for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Like
Okay.
yeah, for sure. If I hadn't wanted things to be different, I would not have started the journey of, okay, how do I help this dog? I wouldn't even have gone there. Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's a great point.
Yeah. So I think like to all the people who are listening, if you have made peace with the situation, then I think you are not helping yourself and you're probably not helping your dog. And there is always light at the end of the tunnel. You saw Snow, and Anushri can go out of the house for 5 days, leaving him. So both of them are happening. And goals tend to change, right? Like you ended up having a very different goal, and I don't think you at any point had a goal of he has to change his behaviors, but I think it was more about how to have him be safe around people. And I think even that kind of moved into how can I make him feel safe so that he's safe for others. And I think those kind of goals just take you on a very different journey, right? Like that matters too. So I think that was quite insightful. A lot of things I've heard for the first time as well. So there was a lot of points that I don't think we had planned to discuss but came up because of the conversation. If anyone has any question for Anushri on Snow's journey, where can they get in touch with you?
FBI most wanted list. No. Instagram. Instagram is good.
Okay, Instagram. So she's on the same name, Anushree Thammanna, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So you can find her. Uh, and she does consultations too. You do?
Sometimes I'm working right now with a few dogs. I'm working with quite a few dogs at a shelter where they're displaying aggressive and reactive behaviors. Actually, I have a wonderful case study that maybe we can discuss it another time. But yeah, but please reach out if you have questions. I'm always happy to help if I can.
Yeah. So thank you, Anushri. I think I kept you quite long, but I told you that this goes quite a long
No,
duration, the
this
lives.
was it was so much
Uh,
fun.
yeah. And the others, I'm going to see you again next week. And please share your love for Snow and Anushri as well. Thank you. I'm ending the stream now. I'll see you next week, Wednesday.
Thank you. Bye.